Perfectly competitive resource market here. So let's go ahead and label our graphs here. Notice that we have two graphs. We have a market graph and a firm graph. Once again, we're dealing with a wage taker, not a price taker, but a wage taker because we're in the resource market now. So we're dealing with a wage taker. So the taker means that I'm taking it from the marketplace. So let's take a look at what that means. We have our wages up here on our y-axis. Rather than price, it's wage. It's possible that we use a different resource other than labor. We could use capital, could use land, but most of the time we're looking at labor here. Okay, so if it's land, you would just put price up here. Now I have quantity on both of these here. My market is just going to be a normal demand and supply. Now remember, in a labor market or in a resource market, our suppliers and our demanders perspective is flipped. The supplier is the consumer, the demander is the producer in this scenario. The supplier, consumers are providing their labor to the market in hopes of getting a job, and the demanders, the firms, are trying to hire people to work for them. Okay. Now right here we get an equilibrium. That gives us our wage. We'll call this W1. And it gives us our quantity here. And just something to keep in mind as a little bonus is that demand for these markets or for any resource market is derived, meaning it'll shift when the demand for the product they create shifts. So if these are avocado farmers, when more people demand avocados, the product, the demand for laborers that pick avocados or avocado farmers is going to shift right as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now that I have my wage for my free market, and I know that this firm is a perfectly competitive resource market, meaning that they're looking for all these firms hire identical labor or looking for identical labor skill sets, which in most cases means unskilled labor. If that's the case, then we just dash this wage over, and this becomes our wage curve here. So this would be wage right here. And we call this actually our supply curve, of course, because it's our suppliers that are supplying their labor at that wage. But we also call this our marginal resource cost. Marginal resource cost is just the additional cost of an additional labor unit. So to produce one laborer is going to cost that wage. If that wage is $10. To hire one person is going to cost me 10. To hire the second person, it's going to cost me an additional $10. Third person is going to cost me an additional 10. That doesn't change because that wage is fixed from marketplace over here because we're a wage taker. Now, if the firm tries to pay less than this wage, because they might try to do that, they're not going to be able to hire anybody. They're going to go down to zero. Nobody's going to want to work for them because they can work literally anywhere else, any of these other firms, which there are many of them, for a higher wage. And if the supplier, if the consumers or households try to sell their wage for a higher rate, they're not going to be able to find a job because the firms will just hire somebody else that's willing to work at that wage. All right, now we go ahead and draw in our next portion. Sorry, so used to drawing product markets here. Our next curve is actually going to be our MRP. So let me change that from eraser. So MRP looks like this. Sometimes you'll see it with like a little swoop at the top, but we're not going to do that right now. And this is going to be our demand curve, and it's also going to be my marginal revenue product. Marginal revenue product is simply the additional revenue that that person is going to bring to the firm. What you do is you take your additional product that that person produces and you multiply it by the price you sell that for. That's going to give you your marginal revenue product, right? So that's downward sloping because of the law of diminishing returns. As I hire more and more and more people, the additional product that they give me diminishes. Eventually, we'll have too many cooks in the kitchen, as we talked about in class. Now, I need to find where I'm going to produce. Well, the profit maximizing rule is similar in the resource market as it is in the product market. But instead of MR equals MC, it's MRP equals MRC. We're always going to produce where MRP equals MRC. And that's going to give us the quantity of laborers we are trying to hire. So we find MRP equals MRC right here, that intersection there between those two curves, that is our equilibrium. And this is going to give me my quantity of labor. So we'll put Q1 there. Now, the most complex this gets is with a shift in our market. Let's say these are avocado farmers and the demand does shift to right for avocados. Well, demand is going to shift right here as well. So we put D2. We're going to want more avocado farmers. When that occurs, the wage for avocado farmers is going to go up. When the wage of avocado farmers goes up, we dash over here, it's going to push up our MRC. It costs more for each person. We'll call this S equals MRC 2, right there. And what that does is that gives us a new equilibrium. At the intersection of MRC and MRP, we dash down. Because of that higher wage, we're going to hire fewer workers. And that's as complex as this one gets. The hardest part is remembering that MRP and MRC are our two equations here. And remembering that we're dealing with labor, so we need to flip this. We're going to have supply as our wage taker here, and we're going to have our demand as our downward sloping portion of the market. All right, hope that makes sense.